I do feel you're just another part of Baba's family I feel real close to. And it's a wonderful privilege to be asked and to get here, leave the smog behind. I feel as if I'm, you get sort of a universal feeling being a Baba lover. You're sitting in Mirrorshot, and you're sitting in the center at Myrtle Beach, and you're here at this place, and at our center in our camp that we've had five Sabbases, and up in San Francisco at the Sufi Center, and it's like you see the same people here and there. We're really sort of an international Baba jet set. I see people everywhere. But it's a wonderful feeling. It gives you that feeling of a new humanity. We're everywhere. We don't belong anywhere. We just belong everywhere. And it's sort of a presentiment of the future where we will be one, where humanity won't have these stupid divisions. Anyway, in thinking about what to speak about tonight, there are a lot of things. I know some of you have heard my story, but I was kind of impressed to tell my story again of how I came to Baba. It's a long story, but basically I started out probably where everybody does, on a search, and for meaning in life. I had studied even early, like 11 years old, I was given Plato's dialogues to read, and I was reading those very happily, and Bertrand Russell, and that's the kind of family I grew up in. And so by the time I got to college, I'd been through a lot. I'd studied Jung on my own and all that kind of thing, and majored in philosophy when I went to Radcliffe and later at Columbia. But as you know, modern philosophy sort of goes nowhere. It really doesn't give you any profound insights. And I remember one particular book, I always think this, I had quite a library. I had accumulated a tremendous number of books, and I had this one book, I think it was just called Consciousness, and it was by some professor at Columbia. And I finished that book, and it was so stupid. It was so, it tore consciousness to tatters, like Shakespeare said, a passion to tatters, that I threw the book across the room, and it knocked another book off the shelf. And that was called Prophets of the New India by Romain Rolland. And that, I said, well, this is a sign, I've got to read this book. And it was a tremendous book. It's the life of Ramakrishna, who was a perfect master, and a very wonderful one, probably the most recent one that people know about, and whose gospel or sayings have been documented and everything, and who especially radiated love. I was fed up with the intellectual philosophy and religion, too. I won't even bother to go into all the religions I studied. They were just nowhere to. I studied with Reinhold Niebuhr at Union Theological Seminary and all that kind of stuff. And here was a man whose very life radiated love for God. And I remember two sentences, especially in his gospel. Seek the lotus feet of the perfect master, and God is love. It's just the authority, you see, that comes with saying something like that. So I used to say, where are the feet of the lotus master? Lotus feet of the master. Anyway, I studied more about him, and when I moved to New York, there was a Ramakrishna Center there, and I went there, and this Swami Nikolananda was in charge of it, a very fine scholar, and not a real yogi type at all, just a very intellectual scholar, but a very good explainer of the teachings. And I kept going there. And then one day, this was like in 1942, they had a big picture of Ramakrishna there, with his sweet smile. And it just vanished. And this beautiful white light was coming out of it. And a voice came out of it saying, "He is your Jesus." And I turn around, and there, coming out on the stage like this, was this figure of a man, a white robe with flowing red hair, and a mustache and a beard, and he was gesticulating and speaking. and speaking in an ancient language, but I knew what it was. It was Aramaic, and it was the Sermon on the Mount. I can't explain how these things happen. You hear two languages, and I was just fascinated. This was Jesus. And in fact, I don't even remember seeing it going on. By the time I came out of this, people were leaving the chapel, and I went home, and it was just an amazing experience. And I'd always had a deep feeling for Jesus, though I didn't like churches and stuff at all. And it was only about 2-3 weeks later, I got this invitation in the mail. I don't yet know who sent it to me or how, to go and hear Princess Machiavelli speak. And I remember the title of her talk. It was called Love is the Solution. Still one of my favorite titles of a talk. And she came out on the stage at the hotel room they'd rented in her white gown and her white turban. Now, this vision was the only one I'd had. I'd seen, this whole past couple of years, I'd seen faces, very dramatic close-ups of people that I didn't know. And one of them was a very beautiful woman with a turban on. I look at this woman, Narina, and it's the same woman. And then there was a woman at the door who greeted us at the door. And I had seen the same woman in this time a dream, saying in French, "Attendez le maître parfait," which means wait for the perfect master. And it was Nadine Tolstoy. And a third woman was there. And I had seen this woman in a vision in a car. She had beckoned me to get in a car. We got in a car, we rode this beautiful road that seemed to go up into the sky. And that was Elizabeth. You know how identified with cars she is. She was driving Baba in India, Blue Bus Tour, and of course when Baba had his accident. Anyway, here were these three people, but no picture of Baba. They didn't have a picture. But they invited me to their home, and I think it was Nadine's room where I saw this first picture of Baba, a little picture of him as a young man. And it was exactly the face that I had seen in this vision of Jesus. So everything fell into place. And it was like to see Ramakrishna telling me, he is your Jesus. He is the Christ, in other words, right? And there was also, I tell these visions because to me they were given, it wasn't me. It was like Baba giving these to me to prepare for him. And another one that happened several years before that, Easter morning, I don't have a vision of Jesus. I had a vision of Buddha. A Buddha appearing, a most beautiful vision. It was like these 7 fountains. And the Buddha seated on the top. He was very golden skin, very round face, beautiful, blue eyes, sapphire blue eyes, looking straight at me and holding up his hand like that. And around him, seated around him, were circles and circles of faces. And the curious thing in these things, no matter how tiny they are, they're very clear, like, it's peculiar. I saw different people, Eastern and Western faces. And of course, the end of the story, that they were all the people in Baba's circle. And I've met most of them, I believe. Many years later, there was Dr. Duncan, there was Margaret, all these faces. And that was in like 1936, Easter morning. So it's like Baba saying, yes, I'm Christ, I'm Buddha, a lot of those things. So seeing Baba's pictures, is a tremendous thing. So of course, I said, this is the one that is the Christ of today. And I got very close to the women mandali very soon. It was like instant karma. We just, I was always at their home, and it wasn't too long before they had asked me to come and live with them. That was the end of 43, after visiting them quite often. They used to hold meetings on Sundays, small meetings, and so on. And of course, the instant news was Baba was going to break his silence any moment. Why worry? We're all going to get illumined, God realized. I mean, you can hardly believe the total different feeling in these days, in the 40s, early 40s. And they were waiting for Baba to come. And then just about in that time, I don't remember dates too well, but Elizabeth's father gave her this property, as you know, the center, and they began to prepare it for Baba. And I got very involved with that, and we spent a lot of time at the center, but it was just jungle. And but meanwhile, 10 long years went by. I'll skip a lot of that because it was during the war. You couldn't go. I would have left immediately, but you couldn't go. And then came the new life. I know somebody asked me once, well, how did you feel when Baba dropped the body? And I said, you know, it wasn't that much of an unexpected thing or a big shock at all. The big shock was the new life. We couldn't imagine. Here we were all keyed up, and Noreen and Elizabeth, they were all thinking, well, they filled our ears with, oh, well, you'll be invited to India, you'll stay in the ashram like we did. You know, our big hope was that. And when Noreen and Elizabeth left, Baba called them back in 1947. Noreen said, well, what shall I tell Baba? And I said, I want to see him. I want to come to India. And, you know, we were still hopeful that you could do that. And she said, she wrote me later that Baba went around for 2 weeks thinking, well, should I call for Phyllis or should I not? Asking everybody about me. and then Baba said, no, later. And of course, later turned out to be 1962. I got to. But then came the new life. It was a total, you know, you understood the whole story, and it was very sudden too. It wasn't like we all knew about it or worked up to it. Suddenly in 1948, 49, Baba sent this very dramatic letter, dictated the 1st of January 1949. This is the end of the false beginning and the beginning of the true end, and all those conditions that he would face, and so on. And we had been following his life, of course, and I have to say that during those 10 years, I got some wonderful letters and cables from Baba personally, and we would write to him all the time. And then when Noreen and Elizabeth went to India, got a tremendous flow of letters and all. So it was, and Baba, you know, contacted us inwardly. And my friend Adele was the only one of my peer group of friends that followed Baba at all, that kind of shared, you know, coming to Baba like that. But finally Baba came in 1952, and that was a real exciting. Just the expectation that whole year was just tremendous. And one weird thing that Baba did to me was, in my work situation, I'd get a job and then get fired, and then get another job and get fired. It was like going on for about 3 years, and Adele too. But each time on a new job, you'd meet new people, and you'd tell them about Baba. We would just like mop up, you know, a couple of weeks here and a month there. And meanwhile, the little Monday night group was growing, and we were keeping up a mailing list and so on. Anyway, Baba finally came, and Adele and I knew the plan, you know. Baba was arriving late in the afternoon, I think his plane landed, and then waiting to go to Myrtle Beach on the midnight special. You always got on the midnight train. And it went to Florence, and then from Florence you drove to Myrtle Beach. So we knew that train left just exactly where it left in in Pennsylvania Station. So I said to her, let's go down, see Baba. You know, we weren't allowed, nobody was allowed to, but sneak down there, you know. I don't know whether you remember the old Penn Station, this giant three-floor, huge building, and we hid behind the pillars. And I said to Adele, you look out, you know. And she said, oh, there's Baba, and there's Mira, and there's Dr. Duncan, you know. Meanwhile, Baba takes out his board, and he's grinning, you know. We're up there. And I got kind of scared. I thought, oh, I suddenly thought, well, I'm disobeying Baba. And I didn't look out, so I didn't see Baba. Adele did. And then comes the letter from Baba inviting Adele and myself to be with Baba 3 weeks. Wonderful, Baba. Yes, Baba. Another letter comes, changed to 2 weeks. Yes, Baba. Wonderful, Baba. And we had been prepared. I must say, I had a real preparation from Baba through those women and other guests that came, Duncan and Margaret and all, to expect Baba to constantly change plans. And so it finally wound down to 1 week. And we took off with Fred Winterfeld's car and drove down to Myrtle Beach. And there were some interesting things on the way, like in the clouds. This was absolutely true. Baba's name in Persian, appeared in pink writing against the gray blue sky. And
this was before LSD.
yeah, it was. LSD. And all sorts of strange. And as we drove past the center gates, I had this very wonderful feeling that the whole universe was slowly coming to a stop right there. And all the motion of mine was like coming to absolutely a still point, like the hub of the wheel doesn't move. And this love wafted out the gate. And we went on to our hotel, and I couldn't sleep. I picked up the phone and checked our appointment. Elizabeth answered the phone. She said, I said, Elizabeth, is our appointment with Baba okay for tomorrow? And she said, oh, yes, he's expecting you. And I just dropped the phone. He's expecting me. He's waiting for me. That was just tremendous. Anyway, the next morning at 9 o'clock on May 10th, it was Delia who was introducing people to Baba at the Lagoon Cabin. And I'll never forget that, just that first glimpse of Baba. He stood at the door of the cabin and he held out his arms and she said, Sri Mayor Baba, this is Filis Frederick. And that first look of Baba, he does say that all the work he does for someone is in that first glance, that the rest, And you do remember that first glance more than any other. I have to say it was true. And that love, that embrace is just indescribable. And it's like Ramakrishna said, you feel like a salt doll thrown in the ocean. You're just dissolved. And so there weren't very many words exchanged. Baba said, I've heard about you from Elizabeth, from this one, from that one, and from within, pointed to his heart. And he always does the same thing. He says, do you love me? Yes, Baba. And he said, do you know where that love is coming from? Yes, Baba. I felt the love circulating from his heart to mine. It's really an actual feeling, and going from my heart to his, And you realize that the love you thought you had for Baba was never your love. It was his love, a gift of love. And Baba says, in Life at its Best, in Beams, he says, God gives the gift of his love to the lover and then forgets the gift so that he can enjoy the love given back to him as if you're giving him. And that was actually an experience. And then he called Adele in and he said, the same greeting to her. And we just had that intimate moment. He said, I'll just read a little bit about what he said because I put it down. I think Mayurji was the interpreter. To Adele, I heard about you from Narina, Elizabeth, Margaret, and I heard you from within. When I see such souls who love me, I feel very happy and strong. People like Phyllis are intimate ones. I love you because you love me so much. These two girls, I heard so much about you both. I feel so happy, he feels so happy, that at last I have seen you. Are you not nervous? No. I'm overjoyed. Are you happy? Very happy. No more happy than I in seeing you. When you know me, you will love me like a little child. I am a child, grown up. And he says to Adele, you are like Mani to me. I love humor. I love to tease and work hard here at various places while talking to you now. And today Phyllis and Adele have met me. And when you love me with pure, simple love, there should be no barrier. Love, pure, simple. Then all doubts go away. Until then, mind gets tempted to doubt. Even if love is there, the mind goes on working, thinking, this is right or wrong. But love does not bother. Do you love me honestly? What more can you do for the beloved? I want love, nothing else. Love me and let God love us. That is what I want. When you love Baba, God will love you, and God's loving means everything. So Filis and Adele both, I am very, very happy. One is who is the humblest of the humble, is greatest of the great. But it has to be in all honesty, in all truth. Better not believe in God than be a hypocrite. So let us love, love, love. All else is illusion. So Adele, what more can you do if you really love me? Do you love me? Yes. And I recall, this is from my notes, do you love me? Yes. Do you know where that love is coming from? Yes. Then that's when I had that feeling. When you love Baba, God's love means everything. And then Baba beckoned, for us to go and meet the women mandali. And the same day I met Meera, which was, second to meeting Baba. Meeting her was a fantastic experience. And Mani and the women Baba brought with him, Rano, Kitty, Goer, Meera. And all that week we had the privilege to be with Baba and the women. They did not go out on the center. At first I never quite realized that. We were running around all day with Baba, but they weren't out on the center. Except early in the morning we walked on the beach with the women and Baba. And but all that whole week we were just Baba's guests and had these very intimate meetings with Baba. The following day we had a chance, each one of us, the few that were there, for a private interview with Baba. No mandali in the room. Baba sent out even a mandali. And that was when Baba looked at me and he had the board. And he looked so beautiful. This was before the accident. And his hair, and he just looked young. He looked like his early days. And he said, do you have any questions? And I said, no, Baba. I was just stunned. I wasn't really. And then Baba spelled very slowly on the board, those who ask for nothing get everything. So I kind of lucked out. It was really because anyway, but then immediately the mind comes up, the heart came up with a question which I didn't verbalize, but it was like, why did I go through all that, suffering? And Baba took my arm, left head, and he made me feel like his blood coming up through my body and feeling his suffering, his Christ suffering. And so in that light, it makes you think, well, what is your suffering? What are you talking about suffering? And that's the answer. And actually Baba verbalizes that later on to other people and to me later on in 58 when I had a bad hip. And, he said, I give you a little bit of my infinite suffering. And that's the question everyone asks. In fact, in 56, when those TV cameramen came to interview Baba, Murshida had prepared, this one question. Baba, what about the suffering in the world? Everybody asked Baba that, the reporters, And I suppose if you had your chance, you'd say, well, Baba, why did I go through this? Or blah, blah, blah. You forget to thank God for the happiness in your life. You want to know why you were miserable. And that's Baba's answer. He suffers, so what about you? He never did explain the past, your karma, and everything. I have to say that the way Baba worked, as I saw him working with us then, and of course, especially you go through things yourself with Baba, he's working not with the past. He's not any psychiatrist that says, dig up the past or tell you your past lives or any of that crap. It's like, he comes up, what he does is bring up a feeling. First he brings up the good feelings. And you feel like, oh, such heaven. You're sitting here with the God-man, your beloved, or whatever you see Baba, your father. He feels very familiar. You look at Baba, everyone, you've known him. You feel like you've walked into your own family, finally, the dearest one. And that's a heavenly thing. A couple days go by. And then Baba brings up, you're made of opposites, You're like a movie, you're black and white. You wouldn't be real without one and the other. So he brings up this negative feeling. And that depends on your karma where that feeling is. Or he brings up one at a time. And just to give you a teeny example, small one. One day we were seated with Baba around all the women, and Baba looks at Adele. She has these huge eyes, you know. And he says, "You have eyes like Baba John." And instantly, I tell you, just instantly, like a pistol shot, I've come to this horrible John. Oh, he says that to her about her. I just came out of nowhere. And Baba looked at his eyes, twinkled, he said, "What are you thinking?" That's his technique. And I said, "I'm thinking of you, Baba." It just fibbed, you know. And Baba looked at him. He has all these little things with you while everyone else, he has a little thing with he can sit like in 62,000, 10,000 people in front of him, and you having this little thing with Baba all in your mouth. His universal mind. And then some other bad feelings came up. A couple of days further on, you think all these beautiful things. Suddenly all these gooey things came up. I thought of the famous four-letter word that everybody. I thought, oh no, I'm sitting here in front of Baba. Oh, and I couldn't get, it's like someone saying, "Don't think of monkey." You think monkey. And Baba looked up and says, "What are you thinking?" And here's Mara sitting there. Are you going to say it? I said, "Oh, but I'm thinking of you, And it's just Baba's way of, dredging up this universal muck that comes up. And then it's over, and then there's something nice going. And he'll do that with whatever, you go through all these little gyrations. And then I'm staying mostly into 52, but it was so interesting, some of the things. The first contact with this famous walk on the beach that I had was really something. Early in the morning, this is about the 4th day, and I got up out of bed and I said to Adele, I said, we've been so good. We're bound to be bad sometime here long. And so I walk out, and there's Baba. And he comes over, he has a cane, he's all wrapped up to walk on the beach, and he cracks my leg with his cane. His eyes flash, and that's it. And then we go walking on the beach, and Baba walks way ahead. And I see his footsteps in the sand, and I think, oh, how wonderful, I'll follow Baba's footsteps. And I come up to him, and he's bending down, he's putting his cane in the ground, on the sand, pointing southwest, and he draws himself up. His eyes look strange, and he holds out his hand, and there's a shell on the sand. And I heard his voice. He'd take this to Mara. And I didn't even think that he didn't have a board or anything. I heard his voice. I just walked back to Mara and give the shell to her, and she thanks me. I found out later she was collecting shells to take to India. And I start talking to her, and we get real involved, and I don't know, we're talking about gardening and stuff that she likes. All of a sudden there's Baba, and he's going like this, and his eyes are looking at me like this. Everyone's looking at me, and Mani, they're all talking in Gujarati and pointing at me, and what did I do? And then Mani translates that Baba is late for his appointments at the center. I should have led them back on the path, the path back to the center. Why didn't I lead them? I didn't know I was supposed to lead anybody back on the path. I was talking to Mary, but I didn't know, you see. Nobody moves unless Mary moves. So we were walking along, talking. And so my mind goes, oh, the first time Baba's not pleased with you, that's a big shock. And I couldn't understand it, so my mind was spinning, and I was thinking, didn't know the path, didn't know all these. And Baba goes like, and Mani says, Filis, Baba says, stop worrying. I couldn't stop. Filis, Baba said 3 times. And then he called me up to him, and again he took my arm, and this time I felt kind of a thing go up, and blotted out my mind. Just blotted out everything. I felt so good. Not a thing. And I get back, the whole day I'm having fun. And I was, suddenly at the end of the day I said, what happened? I didn't even remember that, what happened, almost. And you see, Baba he created an artificial situation in a sense, because I really hadn't done anything wrong. It was kind of one of Baba's little setups. But it was my worry operation. Baba took away that worry. I can't worry. Since that time, I never went back into these nightmare worries. And not that you can't get concerned about it, but that kind of, you're never going to get out of it. That's why I call it Baba's worry operation. Anyway, the whole week was like that. It was just wonderful. And finally comes the open day when everybody came. About 700 people came. And Bob had given us this little job, to stand at the back of the barn, and when people came down, to show them down the steps so they wouldn't go off in the woods and stumble around on the snakes and stuff. And there was this one man who came, I saw everybody come to Bob. I was behind Bob. And it was wonderful. Next to meeting Baba yourself, it's wonderful to watch other people meet him. Because he's giving out so much love, that it overflows to you too. And so I was getting kind of dizzy in the back there, day after, hour after hour. Anyway, this man comes out, and Baba had embraced him and given him a real experience of samadhi. And he comes out and he stands there, and he's just lost, a big, tall guy. And I said, well, Baba told us to lead people down. How can I get this? And I was puzzled. Baba instantly knows your thought and turned around. Let him stay. So we let him stay, and then we let him down, And he still stood there shaking and crying, as Baba said. And as a little sidelight to that, I'll digress, but when Baba had his accident, the same man was in our group, Monday night group, and we were reading letters from Ivy about Baba this and Baba that. Baba had a shot of Demerol when they set his arm, and he had lamb chops for dinner, and all these little details. And this man's face was going, Baba ate meat? Baba had a shot of drugs? No real master does those things. Can't be a master. He walked out of the Baba group 100%, never came back. And one day I met him on the street, and I said, well, what happened? Oh, Baba's a fake, a false messiah, I'm all false advocate. I said, well, what about that experience you had? I was there. And he said it was the devil's fire. That's how tricky the mind is. And how you have these cliches about gurus and masters and all this theosophy crap and all that, masters don't do that. With Baba, he does whatever he pleases. If he wants to eat meat or doesn't eat meat, forget it. So this guy, he lost Baba because of intellectual mistakes. And I've seen a lot of people do that. So you have to feel Baba and not worry about conventional ideas. Well, the Christ doesn't do such, and the Buddha did such, and all of that keeps people away from them. Anyway, to go back to the open day, a very interesting thing on that day, of all the people that came in the barn, there were quite a few black people. And Baba stayed in his chair and embraced people, but when a black person came in, or a family, he stood up and embraced them. And I said, that is significant for black people. It means that they're going to rise. They're going to make it. And of course, in 52, if you know your history, they started the integration. The Supreme Court passed the rights, civil rights, and all that. And things got better. And all those little things. It's like, while Baba was working with us as individual, he was working with us as a group of Americans, a typical mixed-up group. And you felt often that you weren't just Phyllis, you were a type. You were like a letter on a typewriter, A, B, C, or a computer or something. Baba pushed your dot, and he's working on everyone like you in evolution, And it was somehow very striking, for example, in 58, to skip ahead, we had a very intense day with Baba on the beach and all that. And we came back. It was very playful. It was wonderful. They carried Baba around, and he put his foot in the water, which was very significant. Baba says whenever a perfect one, an avatar, puts his hand or foot in the water, it creates great changes in humanity. Anyway, we came back from the beach to the lagoon cabin, and suddenly Baba went into his universal work phase. And that's when his eyes roll up, right back into his head. And instant silence falls on the group. There's such a vibration. It's like, I don't know if you've ever been in the presence of a real dynamo, electrical dynamo. And in fact, it was so intense that one woman, and she was a Russian lady, suddenly started to scream, "You have what I want, you have what I want." And she rushed at Baba at top speed, and those mandali went like that, right in front. That's why they're so alert, because if she had touched Baba, she would have had it. Touched Baba in that state. And that was a very dramatic moment. And then that was over, and then Baba goes back to his house, and I happened to be standing there with Margaret. And before he went in the house, he came over to us. Didn't say anything, and he stood next to us. And he goes, he does his universal. You see that in the movies and all, he does like this. We asked Adi about that in 52, and he said, he's not sending signals. It looks like he's doing it. Morse code or something. But it's the energy of his universal work in the body. Anyway, he stood near us like that, and then went into the house. I said to Margaret, I feel so knocked out. What was Baba doing? He said, he's using your energy, your subtle energy for his work. And that's what I meant. You're like a battery, just a human battery, and he's using the energy and projecting it into his universal work. And so many times with Baba, you felt like he's doing that. Aside from concentrating on your little noodly problems, you're also a battery, a human battery, and you can feel it here in groups, and with Baba in groups, in Savas groups. And always when we met with Baba, something very dramatic was happening out in the world. And there were some very dramatic instances of that. In 62, we arrived just at the crisis of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the Reds coming from Tibet into India. On the very first day, Baba said, "How do I look?" And he really didn't look too good. But you never tell Baba that. There's a hint for the next 700 years. Do not tell Baba he looks. You say, "Baba, you look beautiful." And so we said, "Baba, you look wonderful." And he said, "But inside I'm like a volcano." He said, "The world was on the brink of the Third World War, and I've stopped it." And if you know the missile crisis, Kennedy didn't know what happened. Nobody knew what happened. It just ended. And the same thing in 56, in July 56, we had a very dramatic morning with Baba where he made us walk here, 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 the 4 points of the compass, and stay quiet while he did his universal work. He looked just drained. He was drenched in perspiration. And he gets this, at first Baba looks beautiful, and all of a sudden he looks good. And he, one of those Spanish Gothic crucified Christ. It's really, if you don't think Baba is the Christ, just look at him like that. I don't know any particular picture that's caught it, except one picture Rick has. It keeps hidden. Rick Chapman. It was taken by that Louis Van Gasteren. It's a slide, a frame from that movie that nobody's seen. It's in full color, and it's just Baba totally naked to the eye with that suffering. I guess because it's a frame in the movie or whatever, it's just that intense, incredible look of suffering on Baba's face. And so in this moment in July, that was the Suez Crisis. And again, if you know your political history, the Israelis and everybody, this terrible Suez thing, they were all ready to go to war, and France was going to war on one side, and blah, 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 and Anthony Eden was muddling everything up. Suddenly it all stopped. The United States was sending battleships and the whole thing. Suddenly stopped. That was the very day. We were at the center, we didn't read news, but later on we found that was the day. And each time we were with Baba, there was something like that. And who knows, maybe today something happened. I don't know. But it's true. Baba called gatherings, and there were always key times. So we were like a battery. And also, that was one reason Baba loved to go to the theater. He never stayed, didn't watch the play, but he was working on everyone in the theater. And I had that chance in... am I going on too long? Everything. His consciousness in every conscious thing. See him in everything and you'll be afraid of nothing. And that reminds me of 52. Every night Baba was giving me dreams and experiences, and then in the evening he'd say, tell me your dream, and he'd explain the dream. And I had this dream where I saw this giant turtle. It was an incredible turtle, and it had Baba's eyes. And then I saw this giant serpent that had Baba's eyes. And then an elephant had Baba's eyes, huge elephant. And then a tree. I put my hand on the tree and I knew it was Baba. It was a tree you couldn't see the top of. And I tell this dream to Baba, and Baba looked at me and he said, now you see me in everything, you won't be afraid of anything. And so it's like he was showing me. And later I found out interesting things, that the 10 incarnations of Vishnu, I don't know how you know your Hindu symbology, one of the prayers that was said in the New Life, the prayer, Hindu prayer, gives the 10 incarnations of Vishnu, and the turtle and the serpent and the elephant and the tree of life, and sort of symbolic. If you want Baba's kiss, accept the kick. Baba always said, I give you the kick and the kiss. And I like what Sharmi just said one time. He said, when Baba treats you nicely, you know you're in the kindergarten. Like children, you don't hurt children or frighten them. But it's, you're a kid when Baba treats you. Read at least one line a day in a Baba book. Hang up a Christmas stocking for Baba, and start filling it with good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Learn to play. You may win his game. Baba always liked to play. You've heard enough stories about Baba breaking up a serious mood and having a game, playing games. Like in this Dr. Duncan's diary in The New Awakener, Baba said for them to suggest games, and so they suggested cricket and this and that, and Dr. Don, just for jokes, said marbles. And Baba picked marbles. He said, now you're president of the marble club. Baba liked to play marbles. Set an empty place for Baba at your dinner table. He is your silent guest. And we used to do that, when we got together. We'd always have an empty place for Baba at the table. Give Baba a nickname, your private little name for Baba, and call him by. Say the 3 prayers every day at least once. Stand up when you do, to show respect for the greatest Godfather of them all. Respect for the Godfather. Imitate Baba by never being offended by anyone or anything. Baba said, I'm never offended by anyone or anything. And he also said, a good man never disturbs anyone. And the God-man is never disturbed by anyone. So if you're still disturbed by other people, you haven't made it yet. Thank Baba for the bad times as well as the good times. They keep you growing. When Jean Adriel left the ashram, the Nasik ashram, she thanked Baba for all the wonderful times with him, and Baba said, thank me only for the suffering. Remember, backbiting is spitting in the wind. You won't look pretty after long. Remember, joy is his middle name. Make it yours. With others, Baba told us to have 1% of his infinite patience. That's 1% of infinity. So he actually told us that in the end of our trip in 56. It was a long story. I haven't time to go into it, but he called us all in, and people were having fights all through the trip, and he made them all stand up and say their piece. And then he said, I want you all to stand up and say the prayer of repentance. And nobody knew it. And Kitty had to run get a copy and say it. That's when I said, I'm going to learn that prayer. And then he called and said, preach, to have an embrace from him. And that he forgave us everything up until that moment. All our karma, all our sins, or whatever that was, up to that moment. And that embrace was just wonderful. Whether you'd been involved in this squabble, you still felt you needed that forgiveness. And Baba said, I want you to have 1% with others, 1% of my infinite patience. So afterwards I said, well, that's 1% of infinity. You have to have infinite patience. And make up your own list and send me some new ideas. Stay Baba.